Hi there everybody, today we are looking at fractional and negative indices. Now if you've not looked at any indices before, then please look at the lesson on indices first of all, because this is kind of the second part to it. So let's have a look in terms of what we're talking about when we're talking about fractional powers. Alright, well, fractional powers represent roots. Alright, so the denominator corresponds to the root and the numerator works as a normal power. Alright, so we'll look at that in a second. So calculate 16 to the half. Alright, so what you've essentially got here is you've got 16 to the power 1, and then the denominator is basically the square root. All right, so what you've got here is 16 square root of. All right, so square root of 16. All right, so that's essentially what half means, 16 square root of. All right, so that was going to give you 4. All right, so anything to the power of a fraction, it means root of, and essentially the bottom number is the denominator, means the square root of. All right, it's the square root of 4. Sorry, 16, which is 4. So here, the denominator means the cube root, and obviously to the power 1 just means the power 1, which is normal. So literally a cube root of 27, which is going to be 3. All right. I might as well talk about, because it talks about in here, if you're talking 2/3, all right, there's two ways you can approach this. I can do the cube root of 8 first, and then square my answer. Or alternatively, I can square my number and then cube root it. All right, so it's in 2 different steps. All right, so now if I go for the squared, that's 8 squared, it'd be 64, so I'd want the cube root of 64. If I cube root, then it's going to give me cube root of 8, which is 2, and then square it, so it's going to give me 4. All right, so there are 2 ways you can do it. So the 3 tells you to cube root, and the 2 tells you to square it. All right, so if I go down the cube root one first, so the cube root, all right, so the cube root of 8 is 2, or I can square it first, which is what looks like what he's doing. So square it, which is going to give you 64, and then cube root, which will be 4. All right, or the other way around. And actually, this is probably easier. It's probably best to go down first to get smaller digits. So cube root of 8, which is 2, and then square it, and it gives you the same answer. So there are 2 different ways of doing it, but I certainly think that the idea of doing the bottom one is easier. Better to go down first than go up to the top, all right? Because if you've got a big number in there and you're having to, square it, then it might be a bit more awkward, all right? So yeah, if you consider here, if this was 27 to the 2/3, for example, then I'd have to square 27 and then cube root it. Well, the reality is, obviously, if I cube root it and then square it, it's going to be an awful lot easier. All right. Right, let's look at negative indices. Well, negative indices is essentially taking a reciprocal. And that means 1 over. All right. So if I've got 5 to the minus 2, well, that's the same as 5 squared, but 1 over 5 squared. All right. So that's all you do with the negative. You kind of change it to 1 over and then drop the negative. All right, so 1 over 5 squared, which would be 1 over 25. So if you've got 64 to the minus 1/3, well, we've already seen something like this. This is the same as 1 over the cube root of 64, because we just looked at it a minute ago, which is going to be 1 over 4. All right. If you have a fraction, all right, nothing to be concerned about. All it really means with the negative is it's going to flip it upside down. All right, so the first step would be literally flip it upside down. That's reciprocal, so 9 over 4, and then you drop the negative. All right, and again, don't be concerned too much about this bit either, because it's in a fraction. All right, the idea of thinking, the square root, because actually all you're going to do is going to square root the top number and square root the bottom number. All right, so if I square root the top number, it gives me 3. If I square root the bottom number, it's going to give me 4. All right, and it's as straightforward as that. So it's going to be 3 over 2, and whether or not you convert it to a mixed number, you probably should. The right thing to do is going to give me 1.5 at the end. Okay, I would really urge you to practice this one. Okay, this is the one that you're pretty much guaranteed to kind of see somewhere in your non-calculator paper to test your understanding of indices. All right, so please get yourself over to maths-school.co.uk and have a go at some practice questions on there. Okay, thanks for listening.